Coming up on the show today, we have author Jack Carr. Jack is an ex-Navy SEAL sniper turned New York Times best-selling author. He's written a series of books starring the character James Reese, and it's now being turned into a TV series on Amazon Prime starring Chris Pratt. Pretty exciting stuff. So his latest book, In the Blood, comes out May 17th, and he's doing a book tour right now to support it. He's also got a podcast called Danger Close with tactical experts and fellow writers. So lots to talk about, and we barely scratched the surface, so get ready. But real quick, before we get to the interview, if you could do me a favor and like this video if you're watching on YouTube, and make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you're watching or listening so that you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you. I appreciate it. Here we go.
Happening.
Yeah, so funny. So do you know Nate Boyer?
Yes.
Army Greenberg.
Yeah,
so,
just in the Terminalist show.
I was supposed to interview him like a year ago, and he just didn't show up one time, and I was like, what the heck's going on? And then he goes, oh, sorry, man, I got this call to do this like Chris Pratt TV show.
That's it.
And I was like, oh, well, I mean, if you're going to get bumped for Chris Pratt, I guess it's okay. Now I'm putting two and two together, and now this is your show. This is the show based on your first book.
That's right. Coming out July 1st, Amazon Prime Video, and Nate has a role in it. What a great guy he is. So he crushed it, as does everybody else in the show. I just couldn't be more thrilled.
Is there a lot of ex-military people cast?
Yeah. So in different episodes, there are quite a few that are military centric, or like Nate plays an FBI HRT, so hostage rescue team guy. And there's a few different military people in that group, but there's a platoon of Navy SEALs in the beginning that are actually all played by Navy SEALs, except for two, Chris Pratt and Patrick Schwarzenegger. And not all, I should say they're all military, not specifically SEALs. We have a Marine in there too. Had to spread the love around a little bit there.
Did you have something to do with the casting at all as an executive producer, or how does that work?
I mean, I optioned it to Chris Pratt because he wanted it, and he's the person that I had in mind as playing James Reese as I was writing it. And back then, he had not been in Avengers or Guardians of the Galaxy or Jurassic World or anything like that. He was, Andy Dwyer on Parks and Rec, lovable guy. And then he had a small role in Zero Dark 30 as a SEAL. So I saw that transformation of Andy Dwyer to Navy SEAL. And I wanted somebody also, and this is before I have a book published. I don't even have any connections in Hollywood or in New York publishing. I'm just typing away at my computer.
Wait, the book wasn't even out yet?
No, I was thinking who would play this. As a child of the 80s, it's very natural to think who's going to play your main character in a series. It's just, part of it. And so I thought, it'll be Chris Pratt, and I want Antoine Fuqua to direct. He of course did Training Day, Cheers to the Sun, Magnificent Seven, Shooter, just amazing guy. And then I actually knew my publisher too. I said, I want Emily Bessler at Simon & Schuster to be my publisher and editor as I was typing. And I found her name in the back of books that I liked, like Brad Thor's and Vince Flynn's, and I thanked this woman named Emily Bessler. And so I thought, okay, Emily Bessler will publish this, and all three of those things happened. She published it. Chris Pratt wanted to option it. Antoine wanted it at the same time, and then they talked and said, let's do this thing together. And now all three of us are executive producers on it. So kind of crazy.
That's really crazy. How do you? It's like you just say you're going to do these things, and then you do. Like at age 7, you're like, yeah, I think I'm going to be a Navy SEAL, and then I think I'm going to be an author after I do that, and everything happened.
Yeah, I mean, you only get one ride on this planet, and you get to decide and make decisions. You get to make decisions that are going to take you down different paths. You're going to get knocked down, of course, but you get to decide how you're going to get up and learn from how you got knocked down and keep moving forward. So I just never took my eye off that goal of being a Navy SEAL, and then writing thrillers like the kind I was reading growing up that I loved so much, like by authors like David Morrell and Nelson DeMille and Tom Clancy and AJ Quinnell and JC Pollock and Mark Olden and Stephen Hunter. And I just always knew that one day I would write those kind of thrillers. And so that's what I started doing as I was getting out of the SEAL teams. And I wanted Chris because I wanted someone, once again, as a child of the 80s, I thought about how Tom Hanks did all those comedies in the 80s.
Yeah.
He made a shift with Philadelphia. He took a risk and he did Philadelphia in the early 90s. And then from then on, he could do whatever he wanted. And I thought, hey, who's that actor today that needs to take a risk, that has kind of done some funny stuff? Because I want someone who is likable. If you're going to spend this much time with someone, whether it's the pages of the novel or listening to it on audiobook or watching it on the screen, I think people choose to spend their time with people they like, want to sit down and have a beer with, want to have a coffee with. And I thought, hey, Chris Pratt is that guy. And I think he's at that stage. Once again, this is before his rise to A-list prominence. This is someone that needs to take a risk and do something different. And this is it. And he crushes. I mean, he goes dark, it's primal, it's gritty, it's violent. And those were all things that were important to me and to Chris and to Antoine when we started down this path, knowing that as you tell a story visually, it's going to be different than the written page. So you had to have anchor points. And those anchor points are things that made the novel resonate with readers. So I'm excited to get this thing out there.
That's going to be awesome. So is each season going to be like, is the first one based on the first book and then second season will be the second book? Is that?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
So we'll see if there's a second season or not. All depends on Chris and Amazon. Yeah. So we'll see.
Okay. So they could cancel it. You didn't get a 5-year commitment or anything.
No, it all depends, I think, on other projects. So what else Chris is offered. And how Amazon and all that works up there with everybody. So we'll see.
But if it's a big hit, if this is like the next Breaking Bad or something, like he's got to keep doing it.
Well, Amazon's got to warm up that checkbook then. So we'll see.
Well, they got the Bezos money. They can do whatever they want.
Oh, I know. You're telling me. So we'll see. We'll nudge them along right here and say, hey, you better make Chris an offer here. So we'll see. I hope so.
So do you get a big check from that too, right? I mean, it's your creation.
Yeah, no, but so this was optioned before I had sold one book. So when you have something, so I had to decide, hey, do we want to wait 20 years in the hopes that you can sell something for more when you've created a universe and have some sort of a, more of a standing, I guess, in publishing or whatever else. And for me, having done 20 years in the military, knowing, hey, it's time to kind of play catch up here and build essentially a business. I made the decision that, hey, it is better for me and to build a readership by just getting this out there and doing something that's going to get made. And so I've always looked at it as, hey, this is a very expensive commercial that I'm extremely lucky to have out there. So I couldn't be more thrilled. But yeah, I think if you're like an author that has 20 books out there, obviously, then you're negotiating from more of a position of strength.
Absolutely.
If you're a new author and you get an offer, well, you can decide. You might want to hold on to it. And in some cases, like let's say Stallone with Rocky. I mean, that's like the quintessential example of someone who did not sell something and let another actor do it. One change that character or change that storyline, and he held on to that. And obviously now we have Rocky, which is recognized the world over as an iconic character and inspired me as a kid and inspired generations now, multiple generations with how long it's been going on. It was such a positive message, and it made an impact on the world that will, of course, outlast and outlive everyone who had a hand in it. But he said no to so much. He said no time and time again, and he did it. So there's different ways to go about doing it, and there's no like one right way. I don't think.
Well, didn't you say yours was a lot of it's the growth of the characters in the book was grassroots, right? People were like, hey, you got to check these books out, like you, and so you're really thankful for that.
Oh yeah, I try to thank everybody on social media as any chance I get who says, "Hey, I got the book," and I told my dad or I told my coworker or whatever else, because that allows me to do what I love, which is the writing. But the books, the third book, and then all of them have been on the New York Times list now. But the third book hit it first, and then the other two went. But the third book hit it before Chris mentioned anything about it being a series, before I was on the Joe Rogan podcast or Tucker or anything that has these large, national audiences that you'd want out of the gate. And I didn't have those out of the gate. But after it hit the New York Times list, then I was on Rogan a couple of weeks later, and then I was on Tucker, and then Chris said something. And now I'm so thankful for that, because it is true. I know it's truly grassroots. It wasn't just because one big show had me on and people could say, very lucky he had you on. It's only because you were on Rogan, or only because you were on Tucker, or only because Chris put a tweet out. So none of those things happened. And it was all people taking a risk on me as a new author and then telling a friend. And I'll never forget that. And it means the world to me.
Wow. That's so inspiring. So you mentioned the Rogan, like I got to ask you about that because, I mean, what is it like to be a guest on that show? I listened to the newest interview that you did, and then I'm like halfway through the first one. But I mean, both of those, like, I'm just riveted by this conversation between the two of you. You're both bringing up all these topics. It's so interesting, and I'm learning so much. But what is it like to be in the seat as a guest?
It did feel a little different because I had done quite a few podcasts. Once again, grassroots type podcasts. And that's something an author couldn't have done in 1975, 85, 95, even 2005. But it's something that you can do today as an author to reach an audience of 5 people, 10 people, 1,000 people, and in Joe's case, 30 million people. But it was interesting walking in there, and it did feel different. I don't know why, but it did feel different that first time. Now it just feels like I'm sitting down with Joe to have a conversation. We knew each other before, but I'm really glad that he didn't ask me to come on before it hit the list. That was cool. I don't know if that was his foresight on his part or just, hey, how I ended up in the lineup or whatever. But now I'm sincerely thankful that he didn't have me on until after it made the list.
How does he know all these Navy SEALs? Just through like hunting and things, or?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm a part of an operation in Lanai, Hawaii, for the 4 partners that we have a hunting operation out there, and he's come out there a couple of times to hunt. So that was the first time I met him out there years and years ago. And so that was kind of that was our connection.
What do you hunt in Hawaii?
Axis deer on this island anyway, and mouflon sheep. Other islands have pigs, but on Lanai it's axis deer and mouflon sheep. Lots of axis out there. And if you haven't had axis deer, it is delicious. It is
really
the best tasting meat I've ever had. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I have to. Yeah. He always talked about elk meat, and so I had some elk burger. You can buy the ground elk at the frozen at the store, but you make burgers out of it. It's really good.
Yeah. And it's a little different when you go out there and do it yourself or do it with your kids or something like that.
Right.
You're part of this whole process and training up for it and getting good on the bow or the rifle, however you're gonna do it, and then going out there and then learning about the animals and their patterns and all the rest of it, and then getting in position for that shot that you can make, because it's important to know your capabilities and your limitations when you go into a situation like that, because that's what you owe the animal. And then the work really starts after that thing is down, and you pay your respects and quarter it up and field dress it out there and have your kids be part of that, or spouse or your friends, and you get that thing out of there and process it and freeze it, and then get to relive it like we do with the kids here and talk about where we were, and our little ones know that they provided this for our family. It's just a connection to the land that's kind of missing in a lot of society these days. So I feel like we're a little. It's important to be appreciative of where that comes from, whether you do it. Just doing it yourself kind of helps, especially as a kid. So you just don't think, hey, this stuff just shows up in the grocery store and it didn't come from a living, breathing animal. You're so disconnected from the land and the animals that inhabit it. I think it's important to get out there, especially with kids, so they can have that appreciation. And then the other side of that is you don't waste it. When you know how much work you do it, and you were a part of taking that animal's life, you don't waste a single bite.
No, that's a really good point. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that's so lost? Is it just because a society has changed and evolved and it's gotten so much easier? Because back in the day, you had to go hunt it. You couldn't go to the grocery store.
Oh yeah, we're only here because we had ancestors that were good at the hunting, or good at making alliances with someone that knew how to hunt, I guess. But you had to be good at hunting and putting food on that table to feed yourself, your family, your community. And then also, a very small part of human history, have we been able to outsource our personal protection and call 911? For most of human history, we've had to be good at the fighting to defend ourselves, defend that gift of life, defend our families, defend our tribe, our communities. So society has only been quote unquote stable. And that is, as some people saw in 2000 or 2020, a bit of an illusion. Society is fragile. Most of the world knows that, but in this country, we've gotten very comfortable with calling 911, with going to the grocery store, and there always being meat on the shelf, always being cans on the shelves. But that's not most of the world, and that is not most of human history.
Yeah, well, it's like this mentality that someone's going to save us, whether it be a politician or whatever it is. Like they're always thinking like this person's going to save me. It's like what I've learned is like it seems like no one's ever going to save you. Like I mean, there's people here that are going to support you, but ultimately you got to save yourself.
There's a company called 30 Seconds Out by run by a SEAL, and that's one of their taglines is no one is coming, it's up to us, or be your own first responder. Somebody else out there, Kerry Trainer, he says be your own cavalry, and there's a lot to that, because once again, society is fairly fragile, and you might find yourself in a position where it makes sense to be a little more self-reliant than we have been in the past.
Yeah. What do you think the solution to that is? I mean, how do we make kids, especially, like you said, I think that's like where it starts, more self-reliant and more aware of these kinds of things.
Yeah, I think it's kids taking accountability, parents holding them accountable. It's our job as parents really to do this, even though they're getting a lot of inputs that might be contrary to some of those lessons from teachers, from social media, certainly, and even if they don't have an iPhone or whatever else, it's friends do. Like those inputs are gonna happen. That's why it's so important for us to get out there in the field, to go hunting together, we try to go on a river rafting trip every year, go to the bottom of a canyon where there's no Wi-Fi and there's no cell service, and we're just kind of on our own down there. And it's important to be prepared, to have that medical training, have that trauma type of training, or at home we know where our fire extinguishers are, or do they even work? Do the kids know how to use them? Do the babysitter know how to use them? Have they gone in the backyard and made a fire? So the first time that they're doing it isn't an actual fire, those sorts of things. So there's a lot we can do that isn't alarmist or isn't paranoid, but just kind of makes sense, especially if you're a provider, which as a U.S. citizen and the head of a household, it probably should be near the top of our list. And just like defensive family, defensive life, these things are all very natural. But we've gotten so comfortable, like I said, we've gotten away from that in years, and sometimes it takes a horrible event to bring us back to really our roots and back to the blood that flows, the DNA that's in all of us, because we are all only here because we had ancestors that were good at hunting and good at fighting. Otherwise, we would not be here.
Right. No, that's a really good point. So yeah, so you've got the 5 book. This is your 5th book, In the Blood. Yeah, that's the title. So it's great. You were just in Arizona this weekend, right?
I was just back from Phoenix, SIG Freedom Days. It's the first time they've done that, and we didn't know what to expect. It was the first time they've ever done that. It's kind of they put all their firearms up and down this line at Ben Avery Shooting Range, which is a gigantic facility out in Arizona. It's amazing. And then they had this little activities center area where I was in a booth signing books. Black Rifle Coffee was there, Fieldcraft Survival was there, Best Defense Foundation was there. It was just so many people were there, and it was so great bringing this community together. And we had such a blast. Got to shoot the new squad automatic weapon, the next generation machine gun that SIG just got the contract for. It was just fantastic. What a great weekend. Yeah,
I just missed. I live in Phoenix, but I flew back to Seattle for a funeral. But then you're coming back to do a book signing on May 16th, I think.
That's right. I'll be there Monday, May 16th at Poison Pen in Scottsdale. Runs that bookstore out there. She's fantastic. And that's where I started my first book tour. I've started every book tour, whether it was in person or virtual after COVID hit. So it's fantastic. I'll be there. Then I zip around the country for a couple of weeks, go to the Reagan Library, which will be amazing. It'll be my first time going there in person. It was supposed to be for Savage Son for the 3rd one, but then COVID hit right when that book was coming out. So that got canceled. And then for the next one, they were still doing just virtual events. So now they're back in person. So I'll be there, I think on Wednesday. Launch week, the 18th. But yeah, I'll be back in Phoenix for Poison Pen on the 16th.
Okay, I'm gonna stand in line because I want to get I probably have to buy a physical copy of the book to get it autographed, because you guys sent me like the digital one or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Yeah, I'm like halfway through the book. I haven't read the other ones. And so I'm wondering, do I watch the show because I feel like whenever you watch the book or read the book and then you watch the movie or whatever, they're like, well, they left out this part and that part. So it's almost like I want to watch the show first and then read the book.
Yeah, either way, I think people that watch the show first and love it will then go to the book, and there'll still be surprises, but there'll be good surprises. And if you do it the other way by reading the book first and then going to the show, there'll be surprises there too, but good surprises because they're all rooted in those themes that are all that stay true to the book. So, a lot of people are probably going to read it just like they do anything and say, "Oh, this was different. This was different. This was different. I hate it." And that's an option. You can go through life that way. But when you're telling a story visually, there's going to be changes.
Yeah. No, I thought it was so.
Yeah,
Well, it's
First
so
Blood the
funny.
book is so different than First Blood the movie, and both are awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, it's so funny though. You because you host a podcast and you did a full episode about negative reviews.
Oh
And it
yeah.
was so funny because like you're reading the reviews and you're not even saying like this guy's a fucking asshole, fuck you. You're just like, and that's what he said. Okay, the next one says like you just read them like word for word. I was
Yeah, it's kind of fun. You get to also choose how you're going to take on, because it's hard to not look at those things. And if I'm on even social media and I'm thanking somebody, then there's
yeah.
that negative one that comes up and you're like, oh, and that's the one that sticks with you for whatever reason. But you kind of got to let it go. It's just how it's the double edge to all this is that, yeah, you get to thank people. And I try to add value to people's lives, whether it's with a post on Instagram or a blog on my website or a guest on my podcast or whatever it might be. That's at the forefront of my mind when I'm doing any of these things. But when I find those, so you can't get away from the negative. If you're doing anything sort of engagement, you're going to see it. And then when you see those negative reviews on Amazon, I think the negative ones actually might sell more books than the positive ones, because when I read
Really?
something and it says, I don't need to know exactly what kind of gun that is, or why do I need to know the kind of knife that was, or whatever it says in there, guess what? There's a gun person or a knife person or a gear person that's like, oh, I want to know these things. And it's not, they know that I just didn't type in Navy SEAL knife and then see what comes up on the Google search and then put that in the book. It comes from real experience. So I think those negative ones actually might sell more books than the positive ones. And luckily the vast majority are positive.
Oh, that's good. Okay. I figured, I mean, it must be if you're on, and who cares if you're on the New York Times bestseller list, then who cares about reviews? I mean, sometimes it's like, it's a little more about sale. Like, there's a lot of movies that make a lot of money that get bad reviews, but they make billions of dollars. So who cares?
This is true. Yeah, they might not win the Oscar, but guess what? They're paying for all the movies that no one sees. And publishing is sometimes the same way, in that authors like Stephen King and John Grisham and James Patterson, like, they are up here and they're paying for all the other authors and books that don't necessarily make their investments back from these publishing houses. I did right out of the gate, which is very unusual, and I'm very thankful for that. But movies are the same way. So the Avengers is essentially paying for all those Academy Award winners that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah, some of those movies are hard. What was the one that won this year about the deaf parents? Did you see that one?
I did not.
It was movie of the year. We watched it and I was like, I mean, it's not bad, but I was like, this is the best movie. Like, I'm used to like Gladiator and like these epic, like Saving Private Ryan. Like, those movies are just like The Departed. Oh God, that movie's so good.
Yeah.
Those are movies of the year to me.
Yeah. Now, yeah. So maybe it's a little different time. I don't know, but yeah, some of those big blockbuster ones, I mean, they help with all those smaller movies that no one really goes to see.
Yeah. Well, so back to your book. So I'm reading it. It's so fascinating. What I like is that now you do a lot of research for the book specifically, right? Like, obviously you have your experience in 20 years of being a Navy SEAL, but do you do specific research and specific interviews for the current book that you're working on, right? Every time you write a book?
Oh yeah, specifically for the last two. So for the last one, The Devil's Hand, I went deep down the rabbit hole into bioweapons and bioweapons research, something that I had no touch point with in the military. So if it's something like the first three books where I do have touch points with sniper stuff or whatever else, like I know I'm going to get the gear right and the ballistics right, and I know who to talk to just to confirm, because it has been a few years since I was actually behind the scope in that sort of a situation. But last time in The Devil's Hand, I went deep down the rabbit hole. This one, for In the Blood, I went deep down the rabbit hole on quantum computing, artificial intelligence, mass data storage, surveillance of US citizens, that sort of a thing. So I had no touch points with that in the military during my 20 years. And the research that I did in books is already dated by the time you read it, because technology is evolving so quickly. But if you talk to somebody who has a touch point in that world, and they're very secretive about it, but they all want to leave things out. But if you talk to enough people, then everybody leaves something out that's different. And so you can put this picture together, put this puzzle together. And although I've never been to the places that I describe in here when it comes to quantum computing and artificial intelligence, I would wager that it's pretty darn accurate.
Really? So this shit is real, with a thing where he goes to this room and there's a thing where you can literally see and hear everything in anywhere in the world?
It is the people that I talked to said they could tell me more, but it would put my book in the science fiction category. So when you read In the Blood, everybody who's reading it, just know that things have probably evolved since I did that research months ago. So it's scary. People who have read it say that it is scarier than the bioweapons research and how I wove that into the last novel, Into the Devil's Hand. So
yeah, that one's crazy too, that you're writing it and then the pandemic hits. Like you weren't like trying to capitalize on that. You were in the middle of writing the book when the thing hit.
Yeah. So the whole theme to that one was what has the enemy learned by watching us on the field of battle for the last 20 years, essentially, at the time I was writing it. And so I want to put myself in the enemy's shoes. And by the enemy, I mean Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, a super empowered individual, a terrorist organization. And as I was writing it, then COVID hit. And I thought, well, the enemy is certainly learning something from our response to COVID. And then a summer of civil unrest hits. And guess what? They're not just passively watching this. They are watching and they're taking notes and they're applying what they learned to future battle plans. And then we have a very contentious election cycle, political season, which continues really to this day. So they're certainly taking notes on that and the divisive nature of our politics and our country at the moment. So it was very natural then, being in the enemy's shoes, to weave all of that in to the storyline, because that's what the enemy's learning, and that's what the whole book was about. So that became a part of the storyline, essentially in real time as I was writing it.
That's crazy. So, I mean, in your humble opinion, like with all the research and your experience with all this stuff going on in the world, I mean, how do we fix this? How do we change course? I mean, is there a James Reese type character that's going to save us, or are we just screwed?
That's a tough question, and I try to remain hopeful, especially publicly. But my wife and I sit down at the end of the night on the couch and get the kids to bed and have a glass of wine. I mean, we were definitely concerned for the future, and a lot of it, I think, has to do with, let's say, 15-second TikTok brain, or how easy it is to be divisive on social media and how that benefits social media companies, first for advertising and now to really change your patterns of behavior and your thoughts. So they have so much information on all of us out there. And then politicians, of course, they can continue to divide us, because who does it benefit? It benefits them, and it keeps them in these positions. And in many cases, they wouldn't do very well in the private sector. A lot of them, they are career politicians, and so they want to hang on to those jobs for dear life. They also happen to be very savvy investors, if you haven't noticed, for whatever reason. Those things go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how they're like, I could say her name, Pelosi. She's got that. There's like a Twitter follow. I think they deleted it, but I think now that Musk is in charge, maybe they'll bring it back. But it was like a Twitter account of her stock portfolio. And it was like, if you follow what that does, like, well, you might be too late, but it's like, she's making a lot of money before these moves happen. It's kind of suspicious.
Just a very savvy investor, obviously, but yeah, as far as future goes, that's tough. It's so tough. And a lot of it also goes back. So you have that, and then it's like a distraction. And instead of spending time in the pages of history books and learning about why we have these freedoms and options and opportunities that we do, and appreciating everything that was sacrificed so we could live in this free society, we could make our own decisions. We don't have that, because we're going from a 15-second TikTok video to the next one. We're going from one tweet to the next. We're retweeting it, and we're retweeting things that have not been researched. And those people who have put it out originally have not put in the requisite time, energy, and effort into it. So it's just this, it's a tough one. It is a very, how do you correct from that? I don't know if you can do it in the numbers you need and necessary to move things in a direction that is positive for the country and gets us back to this sense of a personal responsibility and move forward and appreciate everything that was sacrificed for us so we could be here, so we could pass those same freedoms on to the next generation. That's tough. That's really tough.
Yeah. Well, that's what's one thing about this book that's like inspiring. It's like, talking about these issues and thinking about it, and looking at the history. The history is so important. There's so many things in the history that, that's why if you don't know history, you're going to repeat it. Right. So like, I'm listening to things and like, you're talking about like the Bay of Pigs invasion. I'm like, oh yeah, what was that again? I got to Google that. Like, I'm Googling stuff as I'm reading your book, and it's great. It's great material. And it's like an old fashioned, like you said, a child of the 80s, like maybe I'm a child of the 80s too. So I'm like reading this like, oh yeah, we don't have a lot of heroes like this in the world anymore. We need more heroes like this, like for kids to look up to a James Reese. Like if I had a son, I'd be like, I want him to look up to a guy like that.
Oh man, thank you. Yeah, I think there's, I had heroes in the fictional realm growing up and reading all these books that I did growing up. Those were my heroes. Watching those movies I watched growing up, and then same thing, reading the nonfiction, like reading Pappy Boynton's autobiography about World War II and Black Sheep Squadron, reading 5 Years to Freedom by Nick Rowe, a Special Forces guy in Vietnam taking POW. All these Delta Force by the first commanding officer of that unit, Charlie Beckwith. So I read all those books growing up, and those guys were my heroes. So I had heroes that were real, and then I had this fictional heroes as well. But they all had similar backgrounds. Even the fictional guys that I read back in the 80s, the protagonists, usually they were like a Marine sniper in Vietnam, or Army Special Forces in Vietnam, Marine or a Navy SEAL in Vietnam, or a CIA paramilitary guy in Vietnam. That was kind of the background of the 80s action hero. So I think today that's a little bit lacking, and that hasn't always been the case throughout history. Storytelling exists for a reason, and that some of those reasons were to pass on the lessons of the hunt. So pass on those lessons from the battlefield through stories to the next generation. So around that campfire. So I try to incorporate a little bit that into my novels as well. When you see something in italics, usually it means it came from something that I learned in the SEAL teams, and the protagonist is thinking about it. So I weave those in as well, weave in some leadership lessons. So it's kind of my way of doing what our ancestors would have done around the campfire.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. Sorry, you got to get out of here too. 30 minutes?
I think so.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, yeah, just end with a charity. So is the Rescue 22 Foundation, is that a good one that people should support?
Such a great one. And they train up fully trained service and support dogs to veterans suffering from the emotional trauma, physical trauma of the battlefield. They actually just trained one up for a female Marine who was wounded in the withdrawal from Afghanistan, where we lost 13 U.S. servicemen and women, and he is paralyzed. And Rescue who is training up this delivered the dog to her. So yeah, and that was one that didn't, it's such a tough one, just to give up Bagram and put our servicemen and women in a tactically disadvantageous position at the last minute, essentially rushing to failure at the end, instead of, you had 20 years to prepare for this withdrawal, 20 years. And this is the best that our senior level leaders could do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough. Well, I'm glad that
very therapeutic in that respect. And we also talk about, remember how we talked about appreciation. So there's another Best Defense Foundation I wanted to tell you about.
Okay.
Because they take veterans back to the battlefields on which they fought to say goodbye. So primarily World War II veterans. And my daughter and I, she's 16, we went out to Pearl Harbor for the 80th commemoration events this last December. And I think it changed the course of my daughter's life. She got to meet these guys age 96 to 104 and spend time with them, share meals with them, help them in and out of their wheelchairs and to get them to their rooms or to meals or to the events themselves. And so we spent a solid week out there with them, and it was just
wow,
a powerful experience. We're going to Normandy here shortly to do the same thing over there. But she now has this appreciation that didn't just come from me telling her about or telling her about her grandfather in World War II. She actually got to sit with people of that generation and hear their stories and hear how they lied about their age so they could go fight for their country. She talked to people who were at Pearl Harbor, who watched the Zeros come over the mountaintops and strafe the runway and then come in on Pearl Harbor and drop their torpedoes, and then go on to fight both in the Pacific and in the European theater in World War II. So that's an incredible foundation, Best Defense Foundation. Donnie Edwards started it, and can't say enough good things about them.
Okay, great. I'll put all that stuff in the notes along with your website, and people could get the book. It comes out, was it May 17th, 19th, something 17th, like that?
Yeah, Tuesday, May 17th, but Poison Pen gets it early on the 16th. So
perfect. I'll be there.
Awesome.
Meet you in person, give you a handshake. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You take care.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, thank you so much to Jack Carr. Again, the new book is called In the Blood. It's the 5th in the series. It's out May 17th. And the first book, The Terminal List, is going to be a TV show with Chris Pratt on Amazon Prime, and it comes out July 1st. And both of these dates are going to be meaningless if it's past those times, and all this stuff's available. So make sure to check out Jack's website in the show notes with all the links to all his books, podcasts, lots of cool gear that he has on there, and also his book tour dates if it's still timely for that. If you enjoyed this episode, of my show. Make sure to check out some of the other episodes I've done, including my interview with Army Green Beret and actor Nate Boyer, Navy SEAL and author Tom Shea, and also please subscribe to the show so you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Have a great rest of your day, and remember to shoot for the moon.